listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast, live every single Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern on all your favorite social media accounts, on all your favorite devices. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe. We appreciate all the love. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and Crud.
It's just
I forgot what you were last week.
crud.
Was it?
Yeah. No. Yeah. No.
Because
we were talking about having the crud.
Yeah, but it was something else.
No, it was last week.
It was last week, but I don't think it was
I could
crud.
prove it to you, but I don't want to mention it on the podcast. So,
Crud mucker.
I don't remember.
Something that happened last week, but I'm not gonna say it on the podcast.
Oh,
That's what
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I all I know is that I thought it was a different name, but I don't have any crud.
For some reason.
But you can stick with that. You never. I don't know. You still surprise me after all these years, Keith. There's times where I'm like, I think I know what he's gonna do, and then I have no clue.
He has no. You can never know.
I never know. I
You
mean,
can never.
and I don't know if that's.
He's a
Well,
rogue.
there's some things you know.
He is. He's a rogue.
You always know certain things are coming, even if you don't know when.
I can't even attest to that. I don't know.
It's working!
Well,
Yeah. You know that's always
but
coming.
I never know when,
That's true.
and it's a surprise every time. Every time. It is always.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. That's it. But no, we got a good show. Celebrities are trying to whore themselves out.
Well, they need money.
That's the best way to put it, really.
They're whoring themselves out
And for a cause, not because they need the money.
for other SAG artists that don't get any money right now.
Yeah.
So instead of taking money out of their own bank accounts, they'll paint you a picture. They'll walk your dog.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. We'll dive into that a little bit.
I mean,
it's a little disturbing.
there's things I would be willing to pay some celebrities for, but we can't discuss that on this podcast.
Services.
Services.
Some kinds of services.
And
certain
they
certain celebrities.
Yeah.
they stipulate that certain things will not be tolerated, and it will immediately void any experience of any kind if those things are.
Well, yeah, we're
trying to be
gonna.
acted upon.
We'll negotiate first. I'm not gonna like.
Yeah. You don't just come right out of the gate and ask Amy Schumer to mow your lawn. You gotta like work up to it.
I would.
I don't
know.
want her mowing my lawn.
I would auction off $1
Yeah.
for that. I'd pay $1. Come mow my lawn, Amy.
She'd come in and just talk about how sweaty her parts are.
Oh, of course.
She's like, I've been out
like-
there.
No. You don't understand. I didn't pay you for a comedy
crotch is
bit.
sweating.
It's
That's all
like-
she talks about is her vagina. I
That's
can't
it.
stand it.
I'd rather pay Chris Pratt to mow my lawn. At least that's fun to look at.
Sean's about to.
Word.
See, it's like here, go out here and mow my lawn.
He's getting hot and bothered over there.
And he could do it. Like Amy Schumer probably wouldn't be able to get it done. She would pass out.
I would have Chris
that's true.
Pratt do it, but he'd have to be in the stance the whole time, like he was, like he was talking to that Raptor Blue, like he's just like this the whole time.
Well, how's he gonna cut the grass?
I
if
don't
his
know.
eye-
That's not what I'm paying. I'm not paying to
It's
figure
like
that out.
You give him a ride lawnmower, and the whole time he's just sitting on it with his hands outstretched.
That would be
He'd
great.
be in my backyard with Lando going, hold on.
Maybe instead of mowing the lawn, you just pay him to come over and do that. It's like here,
Yeah.
just do the Jurassic Park stance with my animals.
Hey, can you train my dog like you train Blue, please? I just want to learn some tricks.
or treats.
It's like I'm getting ready for Raptor season. Don't even. It's like, can we play Jurassic World in my backyard?
The Raptor lottery. My name just got drawn. I can get
It would be cool to have him
Raptor.
come over and you play like Jurassic Park on the Genesis. No,
We'll
we'll be.
come over and play anything with me, man.
Hey, yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yep.
Oh,
I'm sure he'd figure out some cool voices to throw in there.
Oh, yeah.
And like make. Oh, he would have fun with it.
Yeah.
You know he would. That's
If
the
I-
reason he's not auctioning himself off.
Yeah. If I was going to be gay, it would be with Chris Pratt or Charlton Heston, and Heston's dead.
Heston's dead, yeah.
But
I mean, there's ways.
That's
Charlton Heston
AI
and
has
Ben Hur.
ways.
It's called necrophilia. We're not into that, Brandon.
I'm talking about back in the day.
AI.
AI could bring him back, but how's he gonna do what I want him to do?
Well, what if it's AI?
It's an AI
Charlton
robot.
Heston?
I want him to
It's like
set
a whole,
my people free.
It's like one of those sex robots they're making, but it
I
looks
want
like
him to
Charlton Heston.
part my Red Sea. You know what I'm saying?
Whoa.
You shouldn't have a Red Sea. You're a male.
Just kidding.
Men can't have Red Seas.
Oh, not according to Google.
Yeah, this is 2023, Keith.
It's like, come on now.
Men can get pregnant.
They can menstruate.
Manstrate.
Yes. I do. I hate
That
this
one fit. That one fit.
Sometimes I'm like, we live in the best timeline, and
Yeah.
daily I'm
I don't know
reminded,
where
no, we don't.
the first 5 minutes of this podcast is. It's just
It had some to do with movies.
a little bit.
We were talking
talking about
paying
actors.
celebrities for things.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were. We'll get into that a little bit more because they've been on strike since May and nobody cares.
I mean,
It's like the only thing I care about is there's some shows that aren't gonna make it, and then there's a lot of other ones that I'm glad they're.
And we're actually going to talk about that too a little bit.
I mean,
We're
yeah,
going to talk about the streamers, the platforms that have the most canceled
yeah.
shows.
It's one of those things now where I'm like, I really don't. The strike, I don't care because Hollywood's been making garbage anyways. So I'm like, you know, I can do without the garbage. It's
It
like,
helps me weed through the garbage faster.
It's one of those things where it's
It's
like,
already out there.
if you want to get paid to do something, let's pay all of Hollywood to actually make good content again. Let's do that one.
But that's not what they're concerned about.
No.
And we're going to talk about that a
Well,
little
yeah,
later on.
yeah.
But we also have our big news on the block, of course, that dropped right after the show last week.
Oh
which
my goodness.
The final vote was tallied, and it was unanimous. Marvel VFX artists have unionized.
They said we're tired of you, Disney.
Disney's next on the block, October 2nd, is
and
their vote.
And that's on a Tuesday. So like that, granted, Marvel's vote was on a Tuesday, but we didn't get the results till Wednesday. So hopefully,
I doubt it.
but it will probably be another right after the show where we get the
And
announcement.
look, I do think we're going to obviously dive into it in headlines. I do think this was the first domino to fall. I mean, everything's just
more's
going
gonna follow,
this route, so we'll see. But first, we've got our review for the week.
Yeah.
We didn't go see The Nun 2 was number one again at the box office.
Yeah.
So either it's really good
It's not.
or there's nothing else out.
It's not good. I refuse to believe it's good.
Yeah.
Well, we decided to dig up something that was still in the horror genre.
It's still in theaters.
And I actually think, man, we've had a couple misses the last few weeks, or at least ones that we weren't too fond of. This is one that I don't know
liked
about
it.
you all. I thought it was a good one.
I liked it too.
It's
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
Enough talk. Let's hear a review of. Yes, it came back out in July. I think was originally
It's
when
not that old because it's
No,
still
it's
in
in
theaters.
it was
theaters.
late July. It may have come back into theaters, but it
No,
came
it's
out
still
July
been in
28th.
theaters. I thought it had a smaller release in July.
Kicked
and
the
it
dog
didn't.
by accident.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
apologize.
She's all right.
I thought it had a small,
got
like
it
a
up.
limited release, and it didn't have a wide release until August.
Well, if we're really
Yeah.
being honest, it came out in 2022.
True.
In Australia.
Yeah.
So we got it a little delayed, but I think it picked up enough steam, enough popularity. But here is our review of none other than Talk to Me.
As we inch closer to October, the daylight is getting a little shorter, the weather a little cooler, and A24 has once again released a horror film that has caught the attention of both critics and audiences. Known for their independent films that are often more artistically off the beaten path, A24 has released its fair share of horror movies, mostly to critical and audience acclaim. Last year we tackled both X and Pearl from the studio, and just in time for spooky season, we've now been treated with Talk to Me. Directed by Danny and Michael Philippe, Talk to Me is an Australian-made film about a group of teens finding themselves embroiled in the supernatural after taking part in a seance-style party game involving an embalmed severed hand. By gripping the hand and stating aloud, "Talk to me," the holder can see and speak with the dead. Going one step further, they can allow the spirit to enter their body by proclaiming, "I let you in." Though the connection must be severed after 90 seconds, or else the spirits may be reluctant to leave. Starring Sophie Wilde as Mia, a 17-year-old girl who has recently lost her mother, Talk to Me has a short 90-minute runtime, but packs in a well-told, concise story, full of chills and horror. Having already grossed $68 million on a $4.5 million budget, Talk to Me has been a rather untalked about hit. Chilling with solid themes and tense scares, Talk to Me is the perfect way to get into the Halloween spirit. Production design and visual effects are well produced, and the film visually looks no worse than any mainstream high-production horror, with characters that look and feel and act authentic. There are moments when dialogue falls flat or generic, and occasions when the characters act in ways I felt were a bit more crass than my family would behave, but even still it never felt unrealistic. While the film does a solid job fleshing out its main characters and giving them realistic motivations, a bit more emotional depth, especially between Mia and her father, who has little presence on the film, could have made for even more impactful scenes of both emotion and horror. Likewise, while the motivations are believable, there are a few moments when the film falls back on old horror tropes of characters making dumb decisions that lead to their demise when a much more logical solution was available. Talk to Me is a modern horror take on a Ouija-style game talking to and welcoming in unknown spirits, in which those who play stupid games win stupid prizes. It's a cautionary tale that explores family, loneliness, and depression without getting itself too far into the weeds or trying to be more profound than it needed to be. Ultimately, if nothing else, it is a solid horror film that will provide plenty of scares and feelings of uneasiness, and one I would recommend and certainly visit again. I give Talk to Me 3 out of 4 stars.
3 out of 4 stars. Wow.
Wow.
Oh wow. It's been a while since we've seen one that at least crossed the 3-star threshold. It's been like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I forget our last 3-star rating. The one we really
Gran
enjoyed.
Turismo?
Yeah.
That would
Yeah, that would probably
that'd
be the
be
last,
one.
Because Asteroid City was last week, and before that was the Demeter. Last voyage of the Demeter.
I already forgot about the Demeter.
It was a very forgettable
the
film.
last voyage.
Yeah.
Indeed. I will probably never watch that ever again.
No, there's no reason.
I mean, it's not like that it was that terrible. It just was that dull and pointless.
Yeah, so let's talk about Talk to Me, which is good.
Because it wasn't dull or pointless.
No.
So, yeah.
Honestly, a fresh surprise out of, not to go directly into the headline that we're going to bring up, but we already somewhat we've already talked about a little bit. It's interesting that I'm like having to turn to foreign films, which I know Australia's not considered foreign really, but it is. It's not, it's a Western film, but still it is foreign. It's interesting that you have to turn to these kind of films to get actually good storytelling again. Well, because they're not so focused on a freaking agenda that you're just telling a good story. I mean, there was hints of it in the beginning that I was a little worried about would get taken out of context, but it doesn't. It literally is just teenagers who go down this rabbit hole of a stupid trend.
It's just, I think, a legitimate
and a good horror movie.
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate representation of kind of like modern teenagers, because that's what I was worried too. I was like, where are they going? Like, because I could see them diving into something more woke, but as it went on, it's like, no, they're not really going anywhere woke. They're just accurately representing what I imagine like teenagers today are like. And I was like, okay, this is realistic. Excuse me, I believe this. So I did enjoy that. And I told you when I was doing the review, it's funny because, like, again, this was distributed. A24 bought it and they distributed it. They did. I know we reviewed Pearl and X last year, and it's one of those things where I mentioned it's like it's funny that when you look at all the mainstream horror films that have been coming out from Hollywood, like the Halloween franchise or the Conjuring movies with like the Nun 2, and they've all just they're terrible. They're generic. They're not scary. The characters are shallow. There's nothing about them that's really compelling. And you look at these independent films where the passion for trying to tell a story and scare you, it's not just, well, what's the spookiest thing we can think of? Let's make a Saw movie where everybody's just getting torn apart. That's scary. And it's like, no, it's not, especially when there's nothing about the characters or themes in the film that you can relate to. A part of what makes horror great is kind of that representation of what that horror aspect is trying to convey, and I liked that in this, and that you get a little bit of it diving into like the family aspect and the depression and loneliness, but also the consequences of your actions and breaking that cycle. And I was like, there's actual characters here, growth and depth, and it's not a whole lot. Like I think they could have gone a little bit more, but for a 90-minute movie, it was very concise.
No, that's
well done,
actually
and
what
scary.
I was very shocked and surprised with was the amount of emotion they fit into 90 minutes. And there are scenes that are slow. They're not fast.
Yeah.
And they're actually heartwarming, not heartwarming in the traditional sense, but they're touching to get you into these characters' lives and get you invested in them and their emotions. And they don't make them just blank slates of, I mean, again, I'm glad you brought up the recent Halloween trilogy, because one thing that really irked me about the third one was the potential that it had, and it focusing on the relationship of the daughter mainly throughout the whole trilogy. And you're thinking, okay, we're going to get some kind of crescendo here. And yet it never really comes to that, and it falls way short of it. Whereas in this, from the get-go, there's an investment in every single character that's introduced, at least all of the main ones they decide to focus on. And I was very, very shocked and surprised that it in the amount of runtime that is in this movie, it just proved to me, it's like, okay, no, I'm not in, or I shouldn't be in the minority, and I'm not crazy for thinking that this is possible now. We still have the capability of doing this today. Why don't we get more of these movies that are in this kind of caliber? And I think it's just pure laziness and pure, like you said, jumping on the bandwagon of whatever tropes, whether it's wokeness or whether it's, oh, well, The Conjuring 1 was great and it was kind of unique, so we're going to throw on 3 or 4 more just to freaking,
just run it into
the ground and bankroll it. Yep. Sean, what do you think?
No, I excuse me, I got the same crud, apparently. Crud. I agree with the 3 stars. I really liked the movie. I likened it to kind of like, I don't want to say like original, but it was the most original horror movie I've seen in a while. Like as far as it's just something I haven't seen before. Barbarian hit me that way when we saw that. It Follows is another movie that is one that I liken to this, and even the idea of the dead kind of using someone as a channel to come back or to have a grip on this world, like it's been done before multiple times. Like back in the late 80s was a movie called Flatliners, which was great. Doctors killing themselves so that they can see if there's an afterlife. It's terrific. And then when they bring themselves back, they've brought the afterlife with them. Yeah. So it's it's kind of an unnerving thing, because I believe in spirits and I believe in demons and hell, and there's a lot of the occult, and I think biblically it says, do not
dabble with these.
Don't dabble with these things. Don't consult with mediums and psychics. And
it's
for
weird
a reason
too, because I think it's funny, because I know most people would say I'm kind of, and this is not to compare the two, but they would think I'm choosing a more cheesy movie. But this is what I loved about the original Paranormal Activity. What I liked about it is, as cheap as you may think it was done in terms of cheap scares and whatnot, to me, what made it more scary was that it did focus on the unseen and things that I do believe can happen if you open yourself up to that. And the tiny little set piece of just having the Ouija board in the house. Yeah. And it just, the way it slowly builds up throughout that movie. It was another movie back in the day, an indie flick that I remember seeing, and it was like, it was terrifying.
Yeah. It
was actually really scary.
Really well, because you don't know, and because it is like highlighting something more demonic, where they had to it's attached itself to a person. And that's what I liked about this, was that not only was it about like them not knowing, like, they're doing it like the party gag, like, oh, this is funny, and and it's just, these are just
that scared me the most, because I was just like, they have no idea what they're messing with,
and that's what I liked, because they had to, and I like that, because it's about dealing with the consequences. They had to let it in. I like that too. It wasn't just that, oh, these things automatically have power over you. It's like, no, you have to invite it in, which is a very foolish and stupid thing to do. But you got these teenagers who think, oh, well, it's just these benevolent spirits that aren't bothering nothing or whatever. Some of them don't even believe that it's really happening at first. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I'm like, how stupid and foolish are you? But I can see it. I can see people that are that foolish to think.
And the only thing holding them back is a belt around a chair. Yeah. And I'm just like,
good. Yeah, good
luck.
Yeah.
It shows you the naive nature of teenagers and what they, the things that they meddle with, and they have no idea the consequences, whether it's drugs or whether it's sex or whether it's this or that and the other. In this case, though, it definitely I would say I thought the coolest thing about it was the hand, because after the movie was over, I didn't even think about it during the film, but I'm like you said, they have to let it in. It's they're shaking hands with it.
Yeah,
it's a greeting or an agreement.
Yeah,
the only two things you shake hands for is to greet somebody or to come to an
making a
agreement.
deal, yeah.
You're making a deal with the other side.
Yeah,
that you can. I'm inviting you to this conversation,
and I do love the
that
way
was just so unnerving to me.
Yes.
After I thought of it that way, I'm just like, man, that's just.
It's creepy.
It's very creepy.
And I don't want to spoil anything, but I did want to say, like, I do like the way it went full circle. Like,
Yes.
I like that was really well done narratively.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it does have some weak moments in terms of, because for the most part, I thought, especially for a film that is dealing with teens, there's always the cringe part of me that's like, I'm like, there's times where I'm like, okay, they don't have to be that obtuse or that overboard, but then again, I also think about people I knew when I was that age.
Yeah,
like,
I knew some idiots in high school.
Yeah, there were definitely those kind of people when I was that age. So I'm like, I may not have been one of them, or I may have been on the outskirts, being like, that's too much.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I did know people like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't unrealistic in that. Some of the reactions, like, I mean, even Miranda Otto's character was kind of a nice surprise. I was not expecting her to be in the movie when she pops in. She not only gives a good performance, but as exaggerated, and again, I didn't have parents like her, but there were moments where I was like, okay, she's being playful, but you can tell she has a loving relationship.
Felt authentic.
Yeah. It was an authentic relationship with her children, and there were times where I thought she made boneheaded calls, but it necessarily wasn't unrealistic in the way that I thought her character was presented, that she would have reacted differently.
Yeah, I felt the same when she's first introduced. I was kind of like, I was a little skeptical because I'm like, I'm not really sure a mom would behave this way. But then the way the movie went on, I was like, no, this is fully believable as her character. And it wasn't that, like, I thought it was going to be like for one of those, like, oh, I'm a cool mom and I'm going to cuss up a storm and do this
more
and that.
of your
But
friend than your mom.
Yeah, but it didn't end up that way.
Right. Well, and there, I mean, that was one of the weaknesses of her character. But again, it played into the character. It wasn't overblown or it wasn't unrealistic.
Yeah, it was kind of also, I think, meant to be a little bit of a character flaw in that how it allows, like, she allows things to happen.
Yep, and what leads them into this position. Yeah. But there were a couple other times where, particularly in the hospital, and I think this more so goes to the runtime of the movie, and you can't cram too much in or it gets bloated. And again, I think for the most part in the story it tells, the runtime is perfect. They don't need to touch that at all. You get exactly what you need when you're diving in. And I will say, though, that I thought there were a couple of instances where I was like, okay, she's a little too forgiving here in this instance, or maybe making a certain call that I wouldn't have made. And there were some things that were a little bit predictable towards the end that I thought were going to happen that did. Again, not a bad thing. It just, like you said, more so to allude to, hey, it comes full circle. But yeah, I thought any of these type of horror movies, especially in the indie genre, when you throw in the teenagers, it's like, I think of the stuff that came out when we were younger, whether it was the original Saw, whether it was Jeepers Creepers, or I'm trying to think of Disturbia, which that
wasn't a bad movie.
No, it's not a bad movie. Yeah. But I think of anytime you're going after a teen crowd, it's I sometimes, like I said, get a little hesitant and worried how that's going to play out. But they not only handled it well, I think they did a good job of creating kind of a new set piece and story around, like this, like you said, the hand, and creating an original story that has it very much has a lot of elements that you've seen through other horror movies, but it does them in a fresh take. It does them in a way that it doesn't bore you.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like they say, there's nothing new under the sun. Like, every story's already been told, basically, but it's how you tell the story now. And I agree with that in some ways, that there's elements of the story that obviously we're familiar with from years of horror, but the way in which it tells those elements I thought was unique, like with the hand and everything.
Well, and Sean, just like you brought up with Barbarian last year, I mean, that being something that was a fresh surprise that I wasn't expecting, that ended up being like, oh wow, this is it's a phenomenal movie, but it touched on all the right ways those senses that make you fearful and oh crap, I can't believe I'm in this situation.
Yeah.
But it's not so overdone that you're like, this is ridiculous. This is crazy.
So one of my concerns that I actually am a little bit less concerned now about, I was going to mention this because we talked about it before the review. I talked about how like it had a $4.5 million budget and it's done close to 70 million. So I mean, it definitely has been a massive success for A24. And my worry was like it's easily the type of movie that could have like infinite sequels, like Conjuring or something like that. And it's one of those things like I would hate for that to happen. Like I don't want to see this strung into the ground like Insidious and The Conjuring. But then I was reading because I was curious because I was like, it's a huge hit. It's like I'd be really shocked if they're not already working on something, and sure enough they are. But when I was reading about it, I was like, actually I could kind of get behind this. It's a similar situation to X and Pearl. So they are going to apparently make a sequel. They're going to do
The Brothers?
Well, they're going to do a sequel that's not been made yet, but apparently when they filmed this movie, they did film a prequel at the same time about Duckett, the character from the beginning. And they said they did it as a found footage, because you notice at the beginning of the film how everybody has their phones and stuff.
Yes.
Apparently the whole thing is like on social media and phone cameras, and there's a found footage of his story. And they said they don't know when they're going to release that, or if the studio wants to release that, because the studio...
Oh, they'll want to now.
Well, the studio's already greenlit Talk 2 with the number 2, me.
Of course.
So they are definitely making a sequel, but the guy who made the movie, since he already filmed the prequel at the same time, wants to release that prequel too. And I'm like, I'm not so much interested in the sequel, but I would be interested in seeing what he filmed.
Right.
Yeah, like if
I'm
it's
the
already
same way.
made,
The sequel to me, like with this kind of story, I'm like first of all, the entities that these kids experience or invite into the room with them, there's nothing really interesting about any of them except for the girl's mother. That's the only one of those dead people that.
Well, that's saying we just know they're dead people.
Yeah. They're just and I mean, there's not even really a lot that they do other than make the kids writhe around and
like a very similar story.
Yeah, so I'm just like, I don't understand. It would be another set of kids getting a hold of the hand or something like that, kind of like the Duckett story. But it's like the Duckett story is kind of where it starts. I want to know where he got the hand, because he's the one who gives it to them.
I could see them doing.
So I like that.
And for it to also, I was just going to say, for it to also be unique with the found foot, which is, I mean, not unique in and of itself, but different from the first movie. It's like, well, at least you're doing something different, not just more of the same. But
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Trying to parse it together in terms of seeing it on different social media platforms and from different perspectives. I was thinking maybe you could do a sequel, and it depends. It would have to be done well and written well. But even from her being in the Twilight area, you see a little bit of her reaction to that at the end. Again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers or just point out like the complete ending of the film. But I will say that it's one of those where if there was a way in which you kind of see her take place in having a different reaction than most people as a spirit, I guess you could say. She's kind of, at least, it's hard to... Okay, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. I can't dance around it and tell what I'm trying to point out. So basically, you've been warned. Turn off now if you don't want to know the spoiler. Okay, so at the end of the movie, when she is in... she's passed on. When she dies.
And they have her soul trapped with the rest of them,
What I would think is just before that, when she is kind of sacrificing herself at the end to end that, instance of her being possessed by her mother or the fake mother in this world, I could see her taking vengeance out on trying to break the cycle altogether and to destroy the hand and end it. And I think that actually, if you made a proper sequel that didn't try to spell out a trilogy and again do like a bankroll this, and you actually made it to where it was like her from the other side trying to destroy it so that other people couldn't get their hands on it.
I agree.
That actually I could see being good.
Bring her back and like she's like one of the spirits they let in, but she's trying to help the teens break the cycle.
Right.
I think that would be really interesting. And that could be a decent way to do a sequel. Now they did say like the directors and the writer, like all of them are coming back to make the sequel, so it's still the same team. So that's
all you got to tell me. I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
I mean, again, I'm always going to be intrigued by the original writers and directors, whoever's involved from the original, until you make a dud, and then I'm like, okay, all right, you've now used up your, again, fool me once, shame on me, or shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So it's like if you get one other chance and you squander it, I'm not going to be as trusting after that.
So here's a fun tidbit, just because I don't know how I got down the rabbit hole, but the writer and the directors came up with the full story and directed the movie and all that, but the concept was actually given to them by Daley Pearson, who is the co-founder of, I think it's called Ludo, which is the production animation company that does Bluey. So this movie has a weird connection to Bluey, a family series, and that the co-founder of that studio,
also an Australian series. Yeah.
Bluey is the company. Ludo is an Australian company that makes Bluey, which is an Australian series. But apparently, he gave the writer and the directors the concept, and then they went from there. So I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah.
It's like,
but yeah, no. Talk to me. 3 out of 4 stars for the movie from Australia. It was a good movie. It's been a while.
You want good entertainment, just don't look to Hollywood anymore.
Well, no, and honestly, you can't because they're not releasing nothing.
Yeah, well, they suck.
So we're going to move on to our headlines and talk about good old some VFX artists.
Yay!
I should say unionizing, not striking. Everybody's striking.
Yeah, well, they could strike now that they're forming a union.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
They're like, well, we're tired of not getting paid.
So, a little interesting here. Obviously, we first announced on the show that they were going up for the vote. The vote passed unanimous last week for them to unionize. It is Marvel, as of right now. Disney VFX houses have decided to take up a vote. That'll be in early October. But so far, I will say it's interesting only because of not only everything going on with SAG and WGA, but heck, you even have the UAW, the auto workers, they're striking. I just think it's symbolic of an era that we live in right now of just not only the bad economics that are going on, but also I think it's a situation. Sean, are you all right?
I was getting ready to sneeze.
Okay. I was like, I just want to make sure you weren't
trying to put a sneeze away here.
We're in that season, guys. That transition to fall, and it's just like the Ohio Valley crud, like we said. It's getting to us. But no, I think it's interesting because you have people who are expressing their pain in not getting proper compensation for their work, yet at the same time they're doing so effectively in a traditional Hollywood sense of using the union to beat that message over the head. And here's the thing, there's a lot of valid points that I do want to touch on as to why I think they based on the Hollywood structure, they definitely should unionize, but in a practical sense across the nation, why I think ultimately it just shows you the greater ills of what's at stake in currently in the environment we live in economically, and just how record inflation and just continuing to freaking print money is not going to help things, and Keynesian economics doesn't work. And I think that's really what you're recognizing here at large with a lot of these disgruntled employees. But no doubt, it seems like for years, and this is kind of what the article that I'll link to in the description below brings up, that years the unions have existed in Hollywood, and yet VFX artists, while they've been around for at least 3 decades, I mean, you really saw the climb after. You could go all the way back to Star Wars when it released in late 70s, but when you want to really talk about it amping up or ramping up and getting into computer visual effects, you're talking about Jurassic Park in the early 90s and throughout that, so 3 decades, and then obviously really blowing up when you get into the early 2000s and with huge epic scopes like Lord of the Rings or your Troys, 300, a lot a huge epic.
Like everything has just
especially
if it's a blockbuster.
Right, I would say a blockbuster film or even a show on Disney Plus, especially Disney Plus with all their Marvel stuff. And that's primarily what we want to talk about because it's the Marvel VFX house. Or houses that are unionizing, but also anything that even just seems like it wouldn't need special effects, they go in and touch up in the slightest different ways. It's almost impossible to have anything release anymore that is just purely practical, which is why it's nice to see things like Asteroid City, which had small amounts, but it still had a little, or Oppenheimer, where Nolan uses nothing but practical effects. Those are true artists working in a visual capacity that you're like, okay, this is something beyond just, ones and zeros in a computer. But the main thing that I think to point out is there have been grumblings for a while in the industry as to why these VFX houses hadn't unionized. And everybody was kind of like, what do you mean? You all don't have a union, you don't have representation? Because, there's all these regulations in terms of, and the way that some people have pointed out, it's like, well, we weren't supposed to, because a lot of times the projects we worked on, we were freelancers. Mm-hmm. We'd work on a project, get done with it, move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. And as being a freelancer, it was like we were supposed to dictate what projects we worked on and what our hours were. He's like, that's not the reality. He's like, anymore, we're on the call sheet. We're supposed to be there from day one to whenever it ends, because during the production you need so much of that foresight for having VFX artists involved to see what they need to do for the film.
And specifically the ones right now that are unionizing, Marvel and then maybe Disney, which is most likely, those weren't free, because those are the in-house. Like, they still have, ILM and Weta, and they talked about how, like, the IATSE, the one guy said he would love, like, to even incorporate those companies into unions eventually. But this specifically was the Marvel in-house, the ones that directly work for Marvel, not for, freelance or independent companies. So I think maybe that's why they had a little bit of an easier go of getting in.
I think that's why they wanted to be or why they came to be the first domino.
Yes, because they work, like, again, in-house for Disney, specifically Marvel, since they are considered two different teams, even though both are owned by Disney. But yeah, I mean, it fascinates me that, let's see, I was trying to look up the quote that he was going under.
Which one are you talking about? The first guy that they interviewed, or the woman that they interviewed? Because I'm looking at her quote, and I wanted to specifically pinpoint it is kind of the ridiculous nature at which they're being asked certain workloads that they're being put under.
Yeah, that was okay. We were looking for the same one then. From Alexandra Rebeck, a VFX coordinator on the upcoming second season of Loki, told IndieWire that when she first joined Marvel on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, people worked 75 days in a row and only got time off when you had a mental breakdown. I don't know how this is acceptable, she said. I don't know how you can work people like this. It was the first ever Marvel TV show. It was during COVID. There was a lot of things that didn't work in our favor. It didn't stop me from coming back to other Marvel shows, and those were way better. So I don't think it's a Marvel thing, but on a show-to-show basis, things can really go horribly wrong. I don't want anyone who comes into VFX to end up doing what I had to do on that show, because that is not humane. That is not normal. And, I mean, I've heard past horror stories. They mentioned the VFX team for Life of Pi. We mentioned that last week, how they had to close shop. Rhythm and Hughes went bankrupt. I believe the VFX team for Sonic also went
right
bankrupt.
after they did the redesign.
Right after they did the redesign, because they don't get paid more. They don't. The studio
That's
expects
what they agreed to.
Yeah. The studio says, here's your contract. You get this done by this date, no matter how much you have to work, no matter how many things we tell you have to change, this has to be done. And it's like, I get that. You do have a contract, but realistically, when, just like with Sonic, when the production company comes to you and says, well, now we need you to completely redo everything because people don't like it, that's a whole, I mean, they spent years doing that work. Yeah. Now they got to turn around and undo it and redo it and see not a penny extra for it. So, I mean, I get it.
And she speaks to that too. She says, we realized that it was a huge disparity between how much you got paid versus your experience. It seemed more about how much can the studio save on money rather than how much is your experience worth. And then she went on to talk about how the reason why it wasn't really an absolute must out of the gate when grumbling started about unionizing, even back in the day, was simply because they were worried about finding work afterward. Mm-hmm. Because once you're blacklisted in a certain production, and they, again, if you are coming from the freelance attitude, if you're coming at it from, I'm going to pay on a work by work basis, well, then technically they don't have to use you again. They can get another vendor.
Yep.
And actually, that's one of the bigger threats. And this is where I see them kind of, again, this is the problem with trying to create a faction of workers who are saying, well, we're either going to work for this rate or we're striking. And look, there is something to be said about when you're being taken advantage of and you band together to say, well, we're not going to work for that rate and we're done. We're not going to be taken advantage of in that way. But then she said the fear now is that even with more of us banding together, and if others like Disney VFX houses, join in with IATSE and a lot of other even independents like Weta overseas, that's the problem, is they may go out of country. Mm-hmm. They may go overseas to other VFX houses, even no names, where they can get this work done. Mm-hmm. And this is part of the problem too, where you have AI entering in the picture. And to me, what I see this as is, look, when you have an industry come to heads, and you're kind of seeing this right now with the audio industry and the fact that they've been pumping, and mainly because they've been pressured to by the federal government to pump money into really pushing out EVs. And it's like, when you have to change the entire paradigm on which your business model is set, then two things are going to happen. You're going to completely disrupt the industry you're in terms of you're going to break a lot of stuff. So there's going to be some uneven years where nobody's happy. Yep. But you're also going to do the exact same thing for your workers and for your customers. And I think it's the same thing with this AI stuff. Is it's only going to make them want to push forward the tech further and to get them to depend on that more so than human input, or where the human input can be spent on far fewer people. Because, yeah, you may say, well, 90% of the work is done by AI. This is what we've talked about on previous shows. 90% of the work is done by AI, but then the last 10% and the majority of the work has to be done by a human editor who goes in and then fixes what AI couldn't do creatively or, done well. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is that you may end up still spending a crap ton of money in both regards. But on the one end, you may only have to pay like a handful of visual effects artists instead of an entire slew of people on a team in a giant warehouse that are working on this. It may only be 3 or 4 visual effects artists as opposed to hundreds. And that I understand is where their real fear comes into play. So yeah, you can't cherry pick this and say, oh no, this is. You can say right now, yeah, this is a great thing they voted on and they're voting in solidarity. But we still don't know the repercussions of this long term and how this changes the industry moving forward, especially with the current state that we're in with the strikes and with nothing being done. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, what are your all's thoughts on that? I mean, here they are, they're unionizing, but also at a time where you already have disgruntledness and it's like no work's being created.
Part of me is that's why it's like, okay, now it's a great time, to strike the iron, it's hot or whatever. It's one of those things where you have the actors already striking, writers are already striking. There's concerns about AI from both of them. VFX artists have concerns about AI. They're tired of being underpaid, and they don't really have a dog in the fight the way they feel these other do because they have union representation. So it's like, unionize, maybe we could fight against having our jobs replaced by AI. Maybe we can fight for the more money. And I do think that it's not lost to them the time frame they're doing it. It's like, yeah, you could say maybe it would have happened anyways, and I think eventually it would have, but I do think that because there's already strikes going on, they knew, hey, if we want something, now's a great time to have some leverage to get something. Because
and also I think it's a little unfair on their part though to try, I mean, because look, there's strength in numbers. They're admitting that.
Yeah.
And that's why they decided to be the first domino to fall, but also because I feel like they had the most warranted argument of being the first domino to fall.
Yeah, when you
where
look
they're
at what
trying
Disney's
to include
out.
Right. Well, exactly. And not only that, but I always somewhat feel bad when I mock or joke on like making fun of the horrible shows that are like She-Hulk and even some of the Star Wars stuff that's been put out. And it's like there are some things that are breakthroughs, but in most of it, it's like, no, you stopped really focusing on the content and the quality long ago and are just churning out crap and mediocre garbage. And that's not to say a bad thing about the artist, because, again, any artist, and especially even a filmmaker at that, is going to sit there and argue on behalf of the more time I'm given, the better it's going to be.
Oh, yeah.
And we've seen some cases where that's proven, and other cases where it's like, okay, no, you're pretentious and you're never done with your work, and you just have to have a stopping point.
Yeah.
But in case of visual effects artists, I think it is almost that they're burnt out. They're constantly, like you're bringing up, like they're They're going from one show to another. I mean, Marvel specifically, it's like I don't think they have any time of the year where they are resting other than the fact that they're constantly pushing out something, whether it's a movie for theaters or the series that they have.
And when you look at the quality, you go back and you look at, the first Iron Man or the first Avengers or even Infinity War and Secret Wars with Thanos, and you look at the quality of the visual effects in those movies compared to everything that's come after, you can tell it's like they've gone backwards. The quality is worse, and it's like that shouldn't be the case. As you go into the future, you should get better, not worse.
Agreed. Yeah. Oh, Sean, you got anything?
I was just going to say, I really feel like the whole... I know like the AI thing is one of their big scares, but it's like you were talking about, if 90% of any kind of visual effects is done by AI, excuse me, and then you got 10% human intervention coming in to clean up the mess. If I was those 3 visual effects artists, I'm going to charge you out the ass because I'm having to come in and clean up your mess. Mm-hmm. It's like if you chose AI to do 90% of the work, when you come calling to me, you better believe I'm going to be charging you triple,
right?
Because I'm having to clean it up, and because you didn't get me to do it in the first place.
And let's not pretend that there is some kind of error. I mean, just like any kind of actor, or whether it's a musician or a dancer who's wanting to go to Juilliard. I mean, there is an elite status that's built into being part of the Hollywood machine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact is that, it's like you've made it if you're at Marvel and you're a visual effects artist, or you're at Disney. Yeah. You are at the top echelon of your craft. Yet at the same time, because you're just kind of a numbered body amongst hundreds of artists working on the smallest little thing, but they need that many, and you're on just this, churn and burn attitude from their perspective. Again, you have someone looking at the overall product who is the creative on this project, and they are giving their final signature. But your work is kind of lost in the myriad of just, again, the amount of work that's being produced today. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying this is a put down to the artist because, look, we all need to put food on the table. We all need to work. But my question is we brought this up again throughout the summer with the strikes going on. Is this opening the opportunity and the doors for a greater avenue outside of Hollywood? Is this finally the echelon of an era where we've already seen it when it was Hollywood doing this, or when you saw the sweeping epics take note after Lord of the Rings came out, shooting in New Zealand, and it was like, we can not only shoot on location in these other places, we can shoot in states across the U.S. that are not a backlot on Hollywood, that not only look good, but they reward us and give us tax benefits for shooting in their state, bringing jobs there for 3-4 months at a time. Like, why are we only still fixated on, like, everybody knows, okay, yes, Hollywood and LA is the place to go for the movie magic. We've known that for 100 years. Mm-hmm. But is this finally the breaking point of even the artists themselves finally saying, or let me put it this way, they don't have that. They have blinders on because they're thinking we need to unionize and get representation. Yeah. But if the unions are the end of they become the demise of what it is they're trying to, fight for. And Hollywood's just like, well, we'll go elsewhere. Does that lead other artists who just go independently to other places to find not only creatives and visual effects, but actors, set designers? You already have a plethora of other places that you go to, whether it's Georgia for some TV or even up in New York, of course, in the,
Vancouver. Vancouver, New Zealand. There's another... Not just New Zealand. There's another country overseas that gets filmed a lot.
Spain.
Spain. And it's one of those... I agree. I think we are already seeing, just like we were talking about, how, quality content outside of Hollywood, like with streaming, with the popularity of things like Squid Game that blew up, and then Talk to Me being an Australian production. You're seeing more and more people going to content... RRR.
It's becoming mainstream.
It's becoming more mainstream to actually take content and entertainment from outside of Hollywood because it's better. Like, people are enjoying it more. And as well as things where I think the strikes isn't doing Hollywood any favors because already people are turning to other markets for entertainment. And when you're not producing anything people want to see, and then you have a strike that nobody cares about because you haven't been producing anything anybody wants to see. Like, I don't really know. I remember when the writer's strike happened when we were in high school, and The Office was cut off, and Lost was cut off, and
that was
people,
what we were watching.
And people
were pissed.
People were pissed. They were pissed that this strike was going on. People don't care the same way today. I don't know anybody who's been. It's like they're just like, well, I just get on Netflix, or because there's so, like we said, there's so much content. They're like, they don't know that Better Call Saul ended 2 seasons ago. They're just like, oh, it's on here. I've not seen this. I'm going to watch it.
Yep. Well, and they also back then we didn't have the streaming services the way we do. That gives us access to a lot of those foreign made films and shows.
Yeah, true.
So it's like now there's other places for us to go to get content that's not, there's no strike going on there.
No, 100%. I think that's the biggest thing. I think the avenues of reaching, I mean, that's also changed the model on the back end and the business model as well. I mean, think about the distribution edge. You don't have to go through these huge media conglomerates. Yes, they have the money to back up and promote your film, no doubt, and that's still a powerhouse. But the dynamic is shifting. Whether it's the disgruntled employees that are working for the unions within Hollywood themselves, or whether it's the fact that you have other avenues now to reach an audience in such a scale that you don't need a major distributor and a major publishing arm like Paramount, like Universal, like Disney to actually, get eyeballs on your work. And it's funny because when you do turn to these other foreign films that are becoming more mainstream and you're entertained by it, again, you don't care. And any average viewer doesn't, Tom, Dick, and Harry don't care about where the movie came from. All they want to do is sit down and watch something that entertains them. And when you see that, you don't care if it's from overseas or if it's made right here in your backyard. And the thing is there used to be that kind of quality that was exported from the U.S. to other countries that they imitated. Yeah, you still had, I'm not trying to be pretentious here, you definitely had your own neo-noir, very avant-garde films from places, in Italy and France and, foreign places that definitely had their own film culture. And even we in America have adapted and seen Japan even with Kurosawa and, tons of different directors that you could easily pick from other overseas.
You had ones that broke through even without streaming. Life is Beautiful is an amazing movie.
Yeah,
that one. There's certain ones that managed to break through mainly, and I think that was something that the Oscars used to be great for, is that you could actually, unknown films that you weren't really familiar with were being rewarded that were actually deserving, so you could turn to those, and they did highlight things like that, like foreign films that you otherwise wouldn't know about. But now you can't trust the Oscars, and I mean, with streaming you could find things on your own, and it's just so much easier to get content that you enjoy that you don't have to worry about whatever garbage Hollywood's trying to shove down your throat.
Yeah, I think it's and I kind of end on this point. I think it's interesting because when you look at this landscape as a whole, zoom out and apart from Hollywood and other industries, whether it's big tech, whether it's social media, whether it's streaming platforms, it's just it's such a small world anymore of how one person can reach another, that I really do think the dynamic has just changed in such a way that you're not you've kind of lost trust and respect for certain institutions that have always been there. And now that people are kind of finding new avenues to discover new things and see and experience new stuff on their own, and they're like, oh, well, the Oscars didn't really reward this movie, but this is one of the best movies I've seen in the last few years.
Yeah,
and it's quickly making these older institutions that used to be the stalwart, guardian for what came through for the masses, and now it's like, no, there's plenty of ways to get this content, and for it to break through in such a fashion that if it catches on culturally and it touches whether it's the moral or the cultural zeitgeist of the day, it ushers in a new wave of, oh, all right, I'm going to give this a try, and it catches on like wildfire, and you can't stop it.
Yeah.
And then you just have everybody who used to be, you have the old Hollywood, you have the establishment Hollywood who then tries to mimic it and then just garner that success, more success and more money off of it. And it's like, the creativity is no longer there because you've been so caught up in the business model of making more money and growing your own coffers that there really is nothing you're worth, trying to put at risk anymore. You're trying to play it too safe. And yet these all other niche areas of the film industry you can go to and find refreshing new things. And it's like, oh, wow, there is life out there in the film industry. It's just not from Hollywood anymore.
Yeah.
It's no longer a major export of its creativity. It needs to be infused with the creativity everywhere else who learned from old school Hollywood and is trying to bring it back. So we'll continue to beat that drum. It's interesting. We'll see what happens, of course, coming with the Disney vote in October. And we'll keep following this. And, of course...
It's only, like 2 weeks away, I think?
Yeah, it's only about 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
And, of course, we still, I think, continuing negotiations, I think, are set for this Friday. I think that's what was said. I can't remember if it was in this article or another article about the strike negotiations with the studios. They're going back to the table for another round of negotiations.
Yeah, they got.
Who knows?
That clock's ticking.
We'll
the closer they get to the end of the year, they know they're like, we got to get something going.
And they already said. I mean, we had the one guy who mentioned specifically that if they had not made a deal by the beginning of September, we were already going to start seeing delays and start seeing. And look, yes,
it's going to happen.
We're already there. It's going to happen. But do we care? It's like we really don't.
The only one I cared about was Dune 2, and they already delayed it. Yep. So,
and even then, we know it's coming.
Yeah, eventually.
Right.
They're going to release it. They're just waiting for a time where they feel like they need money and be like, okay, Dune.
All righty, guys, let's move on to our second headline topic real quick.
Yeah?
And this is the one we were talking about a little bit and teased about. I mean, we're talking about streaming and having a plethora of stuff out there to watch. Well, I think it was Keith. You had sent this article, or no. I had sent an initial tweet about it was a
very
weird,
misleading headline,
very misleading headline from Discussing Films on Twitter.
From
Variety.
Yeah.
Well, Variety's headline was fun. Discussing
the
who
tweet,
who tweeted it. Discussing Films.
They made it sound like it was how many people canceled the streaming service.
Yes.
But no, it's how many streaming services out there cancel their content.
Like how often. And I was a little surprised by some, but again, you also have to wonder, because it's a percentage, and obviously Netflix produces more content.
Let's break it down.
Apple,
let's break it down.
Yeah.
So based on streaming versus linear TV cancellation rates, streaming overall has about an average of a 12.2%. That's all your major streaming platforms, and that's when it comes to Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime Video, Max, Apple TV Plus, Peacock, and Paramount Plus. So the fact that they're at about 12.2%, whereas broadcast television, so ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, they have a 26.6%. And even higher than them is the streaming service of Max, which cancels about 26.9% of their shows. I'll just read through all of the percentages. Disney Plus is at 21.1%. Paramount Plus is at 16.9%. Hulu's at 15.2%. Netflix is at 10.2%. Peacock at 10%. Prime Video at 9%. And Apple TV Plus at 4.9%. I'm going to read a little bit of this article because it just breaks it down better than I could describe it real quick. Warner Brothers Discovery's owned Max, formerly HBO Max, was by far the most brutal when it comes to canceling shows, coming in at 26.9%. That's probably not a huge surprise, as Max has purged a great deal of content since the closing of Warner Brothers Discovery merger in 2022. And it goes on to say, while Netflix is often as the prime example of the streamer that cancels everything, the study found that streaming service actually only acts just 10.2%, and it shows in the period measured ranked 5th in the field. That includes even high-profile cancellations like Cowboy Bebop, which ended only after just the one season. However, here's the important caveat. The volume of shows across the different platforms varies widely. Part of what has made Netflix a magnet for cancellation criticism is the sheer volume of its original content relative to, say, Peacock or even Apple TV Plus. Like, Apple TV Plus sitting down there at 4.9%. I'm like,
they don't have anything to cancel.
All the originals
6
they
or
have.
7 original shows.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and that's the whole reason. And it's also why it's only $5 a month.
Yeah.
I did find it interesting if you scroll down a little bit in the article, and we'll have it linked below in the description later. But streaming versus linear TV series trends if you look at how many continuing series, this baffles me how many shows there are out there. Continuing series for streaming is 1,817. That's insane.
Yeah.
Now this is everything from freaking docu-series all the way up to
everything on
drama,
all the streaming
everything.
services. Yeah.
221 have been canceled on streaming, and 299 of those were limited series that just ended after its initial run in general. Yeah. When it came to linear TV, so talking about live TV, broadcast, and cable lumped in, there's 1,781 actual continuing series. 193 have been canceled series, and 107. I expected there to be far more canceled series in both linear and streaming than there were that were continuing.
Yeah.
It shocked me that there were that many. And again, this goes back to just how much freaking content there is out there. It's insane.
There's too much. It is funny that how close, because they are pretty much spot on. I mean, the difference is only about 100 series each on streaming and linear, with streaming just being like having about 100 more per category there. And I'm like, that the fact that I guess it shows also viewer trends. The fact that they're so similar, it's like whether it's on linear TV or it's on streaming, it's like, you basically it's if the viewer's not watching it, we're not keeping it.
Right. Yeah. And actually it was funny because they did bring that up a little bit in the sense of like that's kind of the same. Obviously streaming is going to use the same model in the sense that if it's not popular, why keep it going?
Yeah.
But also more so that in streaming cases than I would say linear, because at least in linear you have a little bit more leeway to let a show breathe.
You got ads that
because
help
you have
make
advertisements that make up that revenue and for poor performance. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can let it breathe for maybe 1-2 seasons before you completely axe it.
Yeah.
Which I mean, and look, we know linear on live TV. There's still plenty of shows that get axed after one season because nobody watches. But it makes more sense that in streaming cases, you'd be quicker to pull the trigger on killing a show because you're investing much more up front than you're getting in terms of just knowing hard numbers for new subscriptions and people tuning in. And let's face the fact that when you have a show like Stranger Things that just boom takes off and is hit after hit, it's going to buttress the support that you're going to see money poured into other things that are given a shot. But it still is interesting that I think Netflix, again, kind of like they said, they may have a lower percentage, but they also have a crap ton of content that they purchase.
That's what I was thinking. If they had 1,000 shows, 10%, that's 100 shows.
Yeah.
But if Peacock's only got 40 shows, 27% of theirs, that's still far less than what Netflix cancels.
And again, I just can't. It baffles me how much is out there.
Yeah.
Like how much of this crap people are consuming, or is it really even getting consumed at all? Or what is to say that these things are even worth being made?
Well, that's why you see companies like Max and Disney that are now taking things off of their streaming services that they say no one watches. It's like, we own it, but it's not worth the whatever amount of money it takes to maintain them on our platform to keep it on there if nobody's watching it.
Well, one thing I have a question about, and you working in TV, maybe you can answer this for me, but I'm sitting here thinking, okay, linear TV, those shows, 1,781 of them, they only air at a certain time every day or whatever. On streaming, you can watch it whenever you want.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So if they've got a show, like an NCIS show or something like that, comes on at 8 o'clock every Thursday night or something like that, that's one night of the week, 1 hour of that night that it can be watched. I'm sure they're not including DVR and stuff like that in their numbers
their
of
metrics,
watches and stuff like that. So I'm just saying, for it to only take up an hour of a week, if it's not getting a lot of play, if a lot of people aren't tuning in to watch that, that's big. That's a big difference than a lot of people not tuning in to watch something on streaming that can be viewed anytime.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so to me, for Netflix or for Hulu or anybody like that, if they've got a show that you can watch anytime and it's still falling, then that's more the reason to cancel it. Whereas on TV,
absolutely.
it's like, it's just 1 hour on a Thursday night. It's not that we'll find something to replace it later.
The argument I have against what kind of Keith was bringing up is just that to me, clearly they're doing it for tax purposes to say they can write off a loss, because it makes no sense to take a show off a streaming network when it's even if nobody's watching it, well, then it's not using a lot of bandwidth. It's not using a lot of hardware.
I get that.
But to me, it's
that's the reason they keep throwing out for why they're removing it.
Yeah, it's a BS reason. They're not being honest.
Yeah.
They're literally telling the upfront PR statement that they need to, but really which it doesn't help their case anyway. It's like, okay, well, you made a piece of crap and it failed, so you're just
well, some of them are older shows. That's the thing. It's like when it's a new show, I understand that would be a tax write-off, but like Max pulling like Space Ghost and old shows, it's like
that I think has to do with licensing.
No, because it's still free on like their Adult Swim app,
but
it's just not on.
Okay, that's licensing in the other end though.
Yeah.
That's licensing that they can sell to other streaming platforms to have the rights to air it, so that they still get a kickback.
Oh, they own
from
Adult Swim. They're just they leave it on the Adult Swim app. It's just not on Max.
But can you get Adult Swim on? Well, wait, Adult Swim has a section on Max.
Mm-hmm, but they have their own
They
separate
have their own
app.
streaming app too.
Do you have to subscribe to it?
No, it's free, but it has ads. So you
then there you go.
And that's why they're doing it,
it
because they want the money from the ads.
Yep, they can get revenue that way. Yeah, and I do think that is bogus. I think that's not right to the consumer. I mean,
no,
and they could say, well, it's our content, and
nobody was watching it, so this is the only way we can make money.
Well,
off
and
of it.
that's the BS line. It's no, we know this is something that is minimally popular to the extent that we can get money if we have so many ads that back it up.
It's niche enough that they know there's enough people that will watch it, but it's not big enough that they feel like it's drawing subscribers. So they can put it on something with ad revenue, so they can be like, well, that niche crowd will go there and watch it, and we'll get money that way, since it's not big enough to draw subscribers.
The only time they're going to take ads out of anything or put it on a platform that has ads, it's either going to be a hugely popular series to get you to come over and subscribe, get hard dollars that way, because that's directly to them.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be a show that they're trying to bolster and push up, and they don't want it to be hindered by ads so that people tune out. And that's going to be the only two options. The ones that are in the middle, and this goes back to kind of what you were talking about, Sean, with regard to like anytime it's NCIS or CSI. I mean, those are extremely syndicated shows. I mean, heck, even network television, when it comes to TBS, TNT, all of those show movies all the time. And it's like, all they're doing is just making ad revenue off of something that they've had a right to air for 3 or 4 months before they get the rights taken away and it gets pushed to another streaming service or another network. And all they've got to do is get a few viewers. Plus, I mean, this is kind of going back to the Charter Spectrum/Disney issue just from a week or so ago. The real contention, I think, was here Charter is trying to make it more a la carte, but also they're trying to cut down on their bottom dollar because they know they're paying Disney a certain premium. And Disney's saying, well, this is the cost you get to get Disney, ESPN, and all these other channels that nobody watches. Because ultimately what they want to do is bolster up those channels to say, nope, this is included, whether people are tuning in or not. Well, Spectrum can clearly see who's using those services or watching those channels. And even if they're not, if there's not a whole lot, they still have to pay the bundled price to get it because they want Disney and they want ESPN on there.
What's interesting to me is also a new route I've seen several streaming services taking now is because before it's like we want our original content only on the streaming service so it draws people to subscribe. But some of that content isn't drawing people to subscribe.
Nope.
So now they're actually moving, like it's still on the streaming service if you subscribe, but now whereas before like they didn't have physical releases, you're starting to see Disney Plus and Netflix series are now being released on Blu-ray, so you could purchase it if you want. And then with Disney and Paramount, because Disney's done this with some Marvel shows and Paramount is now doing this with Yellowstone, well, you don't have to go to Disney Plus or Paramount Plus because now they're going to start airing Yellowstone on CBS, so you get some ad revenue.
Yep.
And Disney has, I know with a couple Marvel shows aired, I know Secret Invasion and Miss Marvel both aired on ABC, and I think something on Freeform. I don't remember what.
Well, and
but it's like
I didn't know that.
Yeah. They after they air on streaming first.
Yeah.
But then, like now, they've been showing them on.
I knew about Yellowstone, but I didn't know about Secret Wars or Secret Invasion.
They've been showing them on ABC because then people aren't subscribing, but maybe we can get a little bit more money back on these shows through commercial revenue.
And also, don't forget that they're stripping them from streaming for like a month or two sometimes.
While they're
and then to push them out on DVD or Blu-ray, get the revenue from it.
Well, they did that with Avatar,
and then put it back out on streaming after that window has collapsed. So then, and look. we know Disney is hurting. They're trying to find ways to salvage something from whether it's just bad performance, bad subscription, or loss of subscribers. The fact that they're raising Disney Plus, it's like
all of them, Disney
value,
Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu.
The value is not there, and I frankly, it's like as soon as they announced that, I canceled. It's like I have it through March of next year because I paid for a year of it, but it's like, no, you've got to give me something worthwhile. And what this is telling me is you're trying to try to say that the content you've been producing is worth the extra charge. And I'm like, no, I'm not watching that. Mm-hmm. So you've got to actually give me a reason to subscribe and up the charge for content that is worthwhile. And no, while some of the fans out there are happy with Ahsoka and Mandalorian and all the Marvel shows that are out there and they're eating it up like crazy, I'm not. It's not worth the price increase. And my parents and my family don't watch it as much. Plus, I know that's coming after the success of Netflix doing it. The password crackdown is coming on their end, too.
Oh, and no, Disney's definitely going to do that.
Easily, because they're worried about their bottom line. And look, I don't fault them for being a business, but when you directly come for these cheap shots at the consumer's expense because, it's not as peachy keen as it was a couple of years ago, whose fault is that? Is that me? No. It's you didn't offer me what you promised, and I'm not satisfied. So now I'm supposed to eat the cost? No, that's your bad decision making. Your bad business. You're going to eat the cost overall by people abandoning ship. Mm-hmm. So it is interesting. Netflix obviously is still going to be the king of canceled content just because they have more original crap than anybody.
The problem is that for me, they're canceling the shows that I like. Like they're canceling the more original shows that we haven't already seen something like that before, and they're canceling the nostalgia trip shows like Dark Crystal and things like that.
Well, and it's weird because those are actually the ones too they actually produce in house. So much of their other original content, like Squid Games, they're buying up to put on their streaming platform. It's like they didn't produce it in house; they're going all over the world to find the content and put it on their platform and slap a Netflix original on it. So that's where a majority of their original content comes from. And even that, it's like, what's to say? I mean, there's been a few things they've picked up and renewed when it came to older shows that were canceled on other platforms.
Yeah, they did that with Arrested Development, and they did that with Manifest. And
look, I get it. Short term, like, hey, we're here for the fans. We're going to do this for you all and wrap this up right. I think that's a good way to do it. It's a good business strategy. Yeah. But at the same time, there's also other things they buy from other places, third party, and it's like they're already complete. Yeah. Whether it's a movie or whether it's a series, it could be a limited series that's it's done, it's run. So there's really technically nothing to cancel there. Yeah. They just put it on their platform and it stays there. And I will give Netflix credit for that. Even after they cancel something, it's always there.
Yeah, it's still on there.
They leave it.
It's frustrating when they save a show so they can give it an ending, but then they'll cancel their series without giving them an ending. And I'm like, would it have killed, like, I get it, like, with the money aspect, but it's like, for certain shows, like, would it have killed you to just give them the one more season to end it properly, since like you said, it's already going to be on their series for on Netflix forever. It's like, it's popular. It's like you do this thing with, like, Arrested Development, Manifest, some of the others, where it's hugely popular, so you save it, and it gives you a little bit of a boon. It's like, would it have killed you to just say, let's give Dark Crystal this last season, just the second season, to say, wrap up your story and be done with it. You cost too much for us to keep going, but we can give you an end.
That's what I felt about Mindhunter. Mindhunter is fantastic.
Yeah.
But not David O. Russell, not him. David Fincher. David Fincher was like, he said it was a pain because, one, how meticulous he is and the time period that it's a period piece in the 70s, but it's obviously shot like a Fincher film. Every episode is, and it's long shoots and the production costs were high. And he's like, I just don't think we're going to get a third season out of it. And it sucked. It's a great show. Yeah. It's a good first 2 seasons. But that happens. I mean, that is the way of it. And we've sadly, that is the one thing we have to get used to within the streaming world.
Hey, when you spend, because Netflix does. I mean, I mentioned One Piece. Like, the amount of money they spent on that was just ridiculous. But it paid off. That one paid off for them. So I'll give them that.
All right, one last topic real quick before we jump in. I just want to ask you all one question. Would you pay $3,000 for Lena Dunham to paint a picture of you in all of your glorious detail? Would that be worthwhile?
I don't know that I'd pay $3,000 for anyone ever to paint me. I'm just like, why?
What about Leonardo DiCaprio?
I would
painted you on a couch naked.
If Margot Robbie was like, I'll paint
French
you.
girl.
It's like I'll paint you topless. I'm like, yes, I'll pay you $3,000 for that, maybe. But I'm just
Keith, I think you should pay Lena Dunham to paint you, and it would be in the nude. That would be fan-freaking-tastic. And be like, you're going to see all of me.
Lena Dunham could not ever paint me because she would run from the house screaming.
Why?
Oh, wow.
Just out of sheer terror because, like you said, I'm unpredictable.
That alludes to
She
something
would,
else.
she'd come into the
entirely.
house and just be terrified.
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's what we need then.
Even that price range, I'm like, who are you like? Who are you marketing
so
for? Like,
all
only
of
these rich a-holes are going to pay you that much money to
That's
paint
what I
them.
think is so
Yeah.
funny. So obviously these celebrities are auctioning off crap. I think it was Bob Odenkirk and I'm forgetting who else it was. They were going to partner. At least theirs is something casual. It's for a dinner to sit down with them. And look, I get it. I'm not going to be as crude to say that what they're doing is wrong. I mean, you'd think $9,000. Who the hell cares? And I'm like, yeah, I'm one of those people. I don't give a damn. But at least they're doing it for the sake of trying to give the money to other struggling artists that are being affected by a strike that necessarily they kind of are roped into. But look, you all are the ones that have to band together. You're the union.
That's what's
I'm
funny.
like, I don't know.
It's like screw donating our own money. Let's get other people. I saw a meme, and this is what this reminds me of.
That's what kills me.
And the meme cracked me up. It said. It was a picture of The Rock and Oprah, and it's like, if The Rock and Oprah have the courage to ask you to donate your money to Maui, then you should have the courage to be able to ask that girl out. And I'm like, that's so true. It's like it said if a millionaire and a billionaire is how it said it. If Oprah and The Rock, a millionaire and a billionaire, have the courage to do like ask you for your money, and I'm like, yeah. It's like, why don't you put up some of your money? And I'm sure they'd say, well, we are. It's like, yeah, how much? Like you give a couple thousand here, or you know, like not even 1% of your income, and act like, well, we did so much.
No, exactly. It's that pretentious attitude in general of don't you just have your own checkbook that you can write? I mean, I will say at least The Rock just came. It's funny that he went to Maui right after this, but he was the one that busted open his checkbook and wrote a 7-figure, they didn't say how much, to the coffers of trying to support struggling artists during the strike. Yeah. But I'm like, look, everybody knew when this was being petitioned and they were going to go on strike, and it's the risky run of being part of a union, and you have to be in that town. But it's like, this is what you're going to end up with. And it's like you're going to have there's a large majority of actors, background, and side characters that outnumber the A-listers out there. But yet it's the A-listers who have this ridiculous idea that we even give. Look, that's what I find funny too. We don't give enough about you when the strike is happening and don't care that you're not coming back anytime soon. Why the hell would we give you money to do something as if like your celebrity status is what gives us our meaning in life?
It's like my life would be complete if I could just have dinner with Oprah.
It's like, how full of yourself do you have to be?
The 20-minute virtual meeting with Sarah Silverman.
Oh gosh, yeah.
No thanks.
Oh, I would love it if she would just shut up and let me talk to her, and I could just write her off. But why would I ever pay for that? I don't care.
Now, I would, if I had $2,000 to blow, I would pay $2,000 for an apron signed by the cast of The Bear. I love that show.
Well, there you go.
That would be cool.
That's at least a proper
item. That's memorabilia.
That's memorabilia.
Yeah.
And it's something tangible you could take away after the fact.
Right.
All these others are stupid. Like even the way Lena Dunham described it, she's like a portrait that you can have for your entire time. That you're
like it's the most cherished thing you could ever own is a painting from Lena Dunham.
I'm like, seen her lately? Gosh,
she's looking rough.
She just went right into just.
I'll give Bob Odenkirk $3,000 to actually listen to his doctor.
I love that article.
I'm just like, I like Bob Odenkirk, but I'm like, it's like maybe that's karma right
crazy
there.
Conservative doctor.
It's like he didn't listen to his doctor because he was a conservative, and then he had a heart attack, and it's like, well, maybe you should not worry about politics and listen to your doctor.
Should have been on the blood pressure medicine after all.
It's funny though because he said that sentiment, and I agreed with him, but then I thought about it, and I was like, but if your doctor is a lefty, you shouldn't listen to them. You should not.
I would argue it depends on the
thing
actual advice they give you.
Your penis is getting cut off and they're trying to turn you into a woman, Keith. You shouldn't listen to that advice. But no, at the end of the day, look, and really it ties to another article we have linked, and we're going to move on to our final segment. But it's like, I don't care about these celebrities auctioning off crap. It's like, just put forth your own freaking money. This is, again, the attitude that you have that the world really does revolve around you, and nobody gives a damn. Nobody cares about you like you think they do. And then, two,
I care about Lena
the
Dunham.
fact that you have leaders in the industry sitting here saying that because we are at strike, we do not have the capability and the capacity to create inclusive films and push the ideology and message forward for LGBTQ.
No,
Plus.
IA plus. No, LGBTQIA plus.
Well, in the article, it just says Q+.
Well, they messed up.
In Canada,
Dumb
there's
article.
a 2
Well,
in
it's
there.
because of the writer's strike. They couldn't afford to put those other 2 letters on there.
There's a 2
It's
IA
crazy to
plus.
me too that, again, it's like, it's not about getting back to work, and making money. It's not about, the passion of the artistry and making something that touches, millions of lives and entertains people. No, it's about this. They're specific. Like, we have to get back to work so we can continue to peddling our agenda. Yeah.
Yes.
The only work that matters.
Well,
that
again,
doesn't-
it shows you the cult that they're in. It's literally this cult of like, okay, this is their evangelism. This is how they evangelize.
Well, it's their whole life and personality.
Yes.
And I'm like that's all. They don't have an identity outside of the agenda they're fighting for. And I'm like, that's a sad way to live your life.
Well, and it shows the complete detachment, the same as these other celebrities doing these auctions, the detachment you have with normal common day American people, and just the culture at large that is so disconnected from elitist versus just normal average Joe. And the fact is there's a hell of a lot more of us average Joes than there are of you elitists up there. And yet you all pretend to think that you can sit on your pedestal and know what the commoner is like. And it's like, no, these virtuous things that you think you're fighting for have nothing to do with everyday place Americans who are just trying to put groceries in their cabinets and in their fridge and food on the table, that are making, busting their ass off every day trying to make ends meet. And it's like you're completely at odds with the culture at large, and ultimately completely ignorant of why we do not care about or want to fight for your suffering in this strike time. No, if you're going to continue to beat that drum of not only that ideology and pushing that mindless garbage and that junk, then we don't want you to come back. We want you to stay on strike.
Hollywood is the biggest propaganda machine for that ideology.
Oh, absolutely.
And so while Hollywood is shut down, the propaganda is shut down.
Right.
They can't force feed it to our children through Disney. They can't force feed it to us
You're
through every other show.
They're basically saying the
It's-
quiet part out loud.
Yes.
They're no longer slipping it into the little innuendos they can put into kids shows or into other things that they create, even the big spectacles that they'll put into major storylines.
Maybe
and plot
people will
points.
forget. It's like if it's not out there being spoon fed to us, maybe we'll forget about that and just and it won't
that's
matter
the way
to
they
us much
put it
anymore. Yeah.
That's the way they put it. Is
Yeah.
that they're worried that the longer we go without having it, then we're
We
just
have
going to move
burn
on.
We have to burn it into people's minds, and
Right.
we can't do that
Yeah, if we're sitting here every day, when they're on the strike, the picket lines, those stories, those experiences aren't being told.
Terrible.
Oh, terrible. All right, let's move on to our final segment of the night. Story time.
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
Story time.
Let's talk about story time.
Okay, so is it actually what you have in the notes, or is it something different?
It is, unless Keith changed it, because he typically changes my notes.
I didn't.
And
I
put
don't see
something
anything-
crass.
Yeah, I don't see anything gross.
All right.
So, not yet.
He's thinking
He's
about
thinking
it.
about it.
I am.
No, it is about a time you missed a scheduled appointment. And I put important in the notes.
Scheduled
Yeah.
appointment.
I do have one, and this is kind of a shout out to Pastor Romer. He will never watch this, I don't think. But I missed a recent meetup with him about a month and a half ago. And he did everything right. He had like called me one day. I was actually on my way home from work. It's like, hey, I'm going to this dinner. It's this charity event, and there's a whole table, and wife is going to be there, and couple other people that I've paid for this whole table, but there's a seat. Would you like to come? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And it was on a Thursday night. I knew because of my schedule, I was going to have to pull like a late night, but that's fine. I can crash on Friday when I get home. It's not a big deal. So I was like, yeah, it was, and literally like 2 weeks out. So I was like, I had plenty of time. Literally it was so weird because I usually do this on Sundays, just getting ready for the week, getting prepared. And I'm like, okay, running through like my daily, like what I got to do Monday, what do I got to do Tuesday. And like, I just totally forgot, completely off my radar. And Thursday rolled around. I'm literally sitting in my recliner and I'm like, man, I got to go to bed. I'm tired. I'm just ready to just turn in for the night, let Edie out one more time, bring her in, get a shower, lay down. I'm putting my phone into sleep mode and I get a text and it says, "You okay?" And I was like, oh crap. I was like, did something happen with my family? And like they put it on Facebook or something got posted and I didn't know, or I'm like, am I just finding this out through, like, did he see something before I was told? I'm like, so I'm sitting there and I'm about to text back like, yeah, I'm fine. What's up? And then in the middle of the text to Pastor Rober, I was like, oh gosh. It was like, I should be on it was like up in Huber, Indiana.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, I should be on my way. Like, not even I should be there.
Yeah.
I was literally like, it had hit 7 that I was turning into bed. The event was at 7. And I'm like, well, it's at least a half hour, 40-minute drive up there.
Oh, yeah, maybe longer.
And so I'm
Huber,
like, I was like, there's no way. I was like, by the time I get there, half the event's going to be out. I was like, I jumped out of bed. Yeah. I called him immediately. I said, I'm so sorry. Like, I completely forgot. And it was completely off my radar. And it stunk because I just committed to like 2 other council memberships at my church. And like, I was joining those 2 teams. And I think I was just getting acclimated and getting stuff outlined for those. And it was a lot of stuff at once. And I just didn't put it in my calendar. I didn't put it on a reminder, nothing. And he was like, no, it's okay. It's all right. And I just apologized profusely. And, hey, we're going to get a beer this week, so it'll be all good.
Don't forget.
I'm not.
You don't forget about beer.
Put it on your calendar.
No, but I just felt terrible because I'm one of those. It's like, especially if I commit to something and I tell somebody, hey, I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
I don't bail. I'm going to be there. And when that happened, it was that never happens. And I was just like, oh, of all the people too. But no, he was very understanding. It was just one of those incidents of like, felt like just awful, felt terrible. What about you all? Opening up the floor.
I don't know. I'm still trying to think.
I don't have like, as far as like, because see, I don't like to commit to things because I know like there's times when I just
he's like, I ain't gonna do it.
Well, there's times where I'm like, when I get to the day, like I'll commit to something, but then when I get to the day of, I'm like, I don't want to do that.
That's just called being an adult.
so I don't, because I'm like, and no, not like major things. Like, I mean, just about if somebody was like, hey, you want to do this? And I'm like, kind of, but I kind of don't. So then if I commit and I get to the day, I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna bail. So that's why I don't. Oh no, I have no problem. Like, that's why I don't like to commit, because I'm like, I might bail on you. Like, I just,
wow.
It's that I don't know, like the.
Well, everybody, write an email to RMPodcast at RMProductions.com and tell Keith thank you for committing to the review every week. He doesn't bail on that.
No, I don't. I don't bail on the podcast. No, normally it's like smaller stuff as far as like
hanging out, or
and usually it's same day stuff. So I'll be like, hey, do you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, maybe. And then like it gets like later in the day, and I'm like, no. I was like, I just want to sit at home. I don't want to. And that's part of that's like, I think my introvertedness is where I'm like, once if I force myself to go out and do it, I enjoy myself.
Yes.
But it's that initial like having to put
once you plant yourself on the couch and start up a show, you're just like, nah, I'm like
I don't want to go over like whoever's house now. Like I just, and usually like that's why if it's something I know I need to do, I will commit, because I don't like to like, I say I'll bail, but that's only if like I actually haven't committed. And once I commit, like I feel guilty, so I make myself do it. So that's why I don't commit, is because I don't want to make myself do it. But that lately I've been trying to make myself commit more to certain things, so I know I will.
You don't feel bad for me bailing on you a couple weeks ago when we wanted to get a pizza?
Oh no. No, I had no problem with. Yeah, I didn't even consider that bailing.
I felt bad because it was like I was at work about to get off, and I had texted Keith and I think like Melissa and Jacob.
You were talking about that.
I said I wanted to get a Bonnie and Clyde's pizza.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't had it in years, and Melissa was raving about it, and I was like, I think I'm gonna go by after work and get one. And I'm like, I get off at 1. I was like, that's prime time. Like, get there before a mad dash for dinner, and I can get home and eat. And like Friday night is my chill night because I literally. As I've been working the morning shift, I actually don't have to be at work next day in the morning. So I'm like, I'll chill on Friday nights. And Keith, immediately after this conversation of like, oh, yeah, I mean, that sounds great. Yeah. Keith texted me individually, and he was just
I never had Bonnie and Clyde.
He was like, hey, man, what are you doing? Like, when do you want to get a...
Like, we can go get a pizza together,
And I was sitting here, and I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. And then I was like, but he gets off at 5:30.
Yeah.
And I get off at 1.
and
I really want that pizza. And I also really just want to go home, eat this pizza, and I'll probably crash.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did.
That's actually, see, that's the thing. It's because I initiated it, so I was fully prepared to go get a pizza with you. But the minute you said, no, I would like to get some rest, I was like, that means I can get up my own pizza and just chill out. So I was like I wasn't upset. I was just like, well, now I can just hide in my basement the rest of the Friday night.
Exactly. And honestly, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to eat pizza and play a game until I crashed.
Yeah,
that was
so
it.
it's like, no, I'm happy to hang out, but I'm also like, it's funny because like I said, I do enjoy doing things with people, and like I want people to invite me to stuff, even if I don't always accept, because I need to be invited, so I do force myself to accept sometimes. But it is funny because sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to go nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly just it's small potatoes. It's not a big story, but. Like recently, there's Charlie, the old guy that I work on his computer for sometimes. Yes. So like I told him like back at the beginning of August, I was like, Charlie, man, I've got stuff going on every Saturday. I've got soccer. I've got this, that. I was like, there's just not a free Saturday that I'm going to have until this. It was like the last Saturday of August. And I was like, I can come down to where does he live? Almost to Litchfield, pretty much.
Okay, it's
White Mills
down there.
So I was like, I can come down there and help you out with the computer on this specific Saturday. I was like, I'll probably leave the house around 10 a.m. I'll be there by 11, and I can spend a couple hours there and do what we need to do. Yada yada. Well, dude, I completely forgot.
Oh,
like
wow.
it was 3 Saturdays from that time.
Yes.
And things just flew by, and we had stuff going on, and that Saturday, I don't even remember what I did that Saturday, but it wasn't go to Charlie's house. and I never called him. I forgot all about it. Like never.
Did he not call you or anything?
Well, what happened was a couple of it was like maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I picked the kids up from school, and I pull in my driveway, and he's in my driveway.
What?
And I'm just like, whose car is that?
He showed up.
And I'm looking at it for a minute. I'm like, I don't know who that is. Maybe it's a salesperson. I'm just going to drive by.
Oh, yeah.
And sure enough, I see him come off the porch, and I'm like, it's flipping Charlie is at my house, unannounced. He just showed up.
Yeah, that's a little.
And so he, I got out of the car. I was like, Charlie, is everything okay? And he was like, yeah, I was just, I took this card reader from your house. It's yours, but I put it in my computer bag the last time I was over there, and I wanted to bring it back to you, and I missed you a couple Saturdays ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I am so sorry that I just forgot.
Yes.
And I was honest with him. I was like, yeah, we had this going on and that, and it completely slipped my mind.
Yeah.
So I was like, dude, we got guitar lessons in like 2 hours. And I was like, I got to get the kids dinner, their homework done, because it's tax season, so my wife's working late every night.
Right.
I was like, I got to do all this on my own, so like I don't have a whole lot of time. But since you're here, so he came in the house and we fooled around with this stupid computer again. But I only did it. I was pissed that he showed up at my house unannounced.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I ain't got time for this. But then when I realized that I completely forgot, I was like, I owe you.
Your mood changed.
Yeah, I owe you
like,
one.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And the guy's like 88 years old. And, I mean, doesn't even know the password to his own computer. So it's like...
the headache it's going to be to actually sit down and figure this out.
So luckily he was like, yeah, we're getting ready to go on a trip to Colorado for a couple of weeks. And I was just like, cha-ching, that's 2 weeks he's gone. And won't be calling me.
It's
for his computer to show him the same freaking thing over and over again.
But you're at a point where it's just like you got to go at 2 week stints where you're just like, is this going to be the week where I got to go down there? Or I got to call from Charlie?
Yeah, I felt bad after I realized, after he said, like, I missed you Saturday. I was like, what does he mean he missed me Saturday?
He misses you,
Sean.
And I was like, oh, I was supposed to be there 2 Saturdays ago.
Right.
Gosh.
Well, it is really that weird part of being an adult where when you get enough stuff going on and there's just something that falls through the cracks.
Yeah.
And you
get
don't
a lot on your plate.
But it is that moment where you realize, like, okay, I've either one, I got to take a step back and like be more organized, or I'm just like I'm overcommitting. I'm taking on too much, and it wasn't that with Pastor Romer. Thankfully, it was just that was something that was a nice gesture, and it would have been a nice evening. And I had other things going on that I should have penciled that in and put it down as a hard, event in my calendar.
Yeah.
And because I didn't do that, it was the one time that it slipped my mind. And here I am treating it like it's any other night. And it would have, honestly, if he would have texted me 5 minutes later, I would not have responded until he would have thought I completely stood him up.
Yeah.
But I would not have responded because my phone would have been in sleep mode. I would have not gotten any text until I woke up. And I would have woke up to him being like, you okay? Thinking, what? Why is he asking me, there's something like wrong with the family or, but it was just by virtue of here I am laying down in my bed about to pass out, and he gets that and I'm like, oh my gosh, you feel terrible. You feel awful. But yeah, hey, if you got your own incident that you had a special appointment you were supposed to make, an important appointment, and you completely just botched it and totally forgot. Like maybe going to college and missing a final and then failing and having to repeat it all over again.
Dang.
That sucks. That never happened. I'm just throwing it out there. But hey, if that happened to you, by all means, you can write into our email that we just mentioned. What is that email, Keith?
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That was beautiful. And always like, share, subscribe. Appreciate all the love on all of our social media accounts right there at the bottom of your screen. Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Pics, and of course search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube and Rumble, and share on all the platforms.
Share alike.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm not sure what we're reviewing next week.
We'll
figure that out.
Yeah.
So it'll be a surprise.
Keep you posted on all the socials.
Yeah,
The
it'll be
Nun
real
too.
nice. Real nice. One thing we never we commit to and never do. Alrighty, guys, that's gonna do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
Oh, there it is.
Crud.
Not anymore.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.